Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here for this masterclass tutorial, where we're going to dive deep into the hidden machinery of literary analysis. Have you ever read a play or a novel and just kind of felt like there was this secret conversation happening right beneath the surface? Well, today, we aren't just reading the words on the page, we are picking the locks on those hidden conversations. I want to start off by asking you to just ponder this for a second. Can you truly understand a story without knowing who wrote it or when it was written? It's a rhetorical question, of course, but it really challenges us to think actively about the books we love. You know, when we read, it's so easy to just look at the ink on the page. But what if overlooking the creator and their specific era means we're actually missing half the story? So here is our syllabus for today. First, unlocking literary context. Second, building a Frayer model. Third, the biographical lens. Fourth, the historical lens. And finally, we'll wrap up with the roundtable discussion. All right, let's jump right into section 1, unlocking literary context. Let's start by establishing exactly what we mean when we use the word context. Think of literary context as this massive, invisible web of background facts, character motives, and settings. It encompasses all those surrounding factors that help us clarify meaning. Basically, it's the essential stuff outside the main plot that helps us grasp the true living world the story actually exists in. If we want to put a formal definition to it, literary context is the details about events, characters, settings, and background facts. To really fully understand a text, it ultimately answers one absolutely critical question. What do I need to know about the world of this text before I can understand it? Context is crucial, guys, because it reveals the author's hidden choices about tone, language, and theme that might otherwise just seem completely random to us. Moving right along to section 2, building a Frayer model. Okay, so this is the Frayer model. It's a remarkably helpful 4-square graphic organizer. You place your key term, like literary context, right in the middle. Then you just fill out the 4 quadrants around it. First, you write a definition in your own words. Next, you list its characteristics. Then you provide some real-life examples from texts you've actually read. And finally, you list non-examples. Trust me, knowing what a concept isn't completely cements your understanding of what it is. As we move forward, I highly challenge you to build one of these models for our next 2 lenses. Now for the fun part. Section 3, the biographical lens. Let's look at our very first specific type of context, examining how an author's personal life builds the foundation of their art. Biographical context means looking at a writer's personal life, their beliefs, their experiences, traumas, and their entire worldview. Why do we do this? Because it helps us link a character's deepest principles directly back to the writer's own living, breathing experiences. Enter our primary case study for today, Maurice Maeterlinck. He was an absolute giant of the symbolist movement, and 2 massive influences really shaped his mind. First, a profound obsession with the chilling tales of Edgar Allan Poe, and second, a deep fascination with medieval mysticism. He was really captivated by this idea that there are mysterious, spiritual, and completely uncontrollable forces beyond human understanding. So, let's take this biographical lens and use it to magnify the hidden influences in his incredibly famous play, The Intruder. If we just read the play cold, honestly, we might miss the magic entirely. But armed with his biography, everything changes. Suddenly, Maeterlinck's personal beliefs manifest right in front of us. Following Poe's influence, the play has this incredibly eerie ambiance to it. But the characters? They're literally just having a mundane family conversation, like arguing about the weather. Yet, because we're using that biographical lens, we realize this totally ordinary talk is purposefully masking a creeping dread and the lurking presence of death. And that medieval mysticism we talked about? It's right there in the stark contrast he writes into the stage directions. Brightness versus darkness, life versus death. He's intentionally using the stage to evoke forces completely beyond human control. Now, a quick pro tip for your own analysis, and this is super important. Literature isn't always an autobiography. A text is rarely a direct literal mirror of the author's life. Remember, authors are artists. They exaggerate. They invent things out of thin air. The biographical lens is a master key for sure, but it's not the only tool in your box. So just don't assume everything you read is literal. Shifting gears now to section 4, the historical lens. So now we're going to zoom out from the individual and examine the entire era surrounding them. Historical context involves looking at the specific time period, the major events, the social norms, and the political forces that shaped daily life when a text was actually created. Without understanding the societal constraints of the era, you might completely misinterpret why characters make certain choices, or honestly, you might miss some deep social critiques entirely. To see this in action, let's use Mark Twain's classic story, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Without the historical backdrop, it's basically just a simple story of a boy and a man on a raft navigating the Mississippi River. But let's look a little closer. Here is the historical reality. Slavery in the United States was abolished in 1865, which was just before the novel was published. However, despite that legal change, severe racial tensions and very open discrimination remained incredibly widespread. By understanding these 19th century societal norms, we can clearly see Twain's true intent. By depicting the brutal realities of the time, Twain wasn't just telling a fun story. He was purposefully weaponizing his novel against the deeply ingrained prejudices of his era. Knowing the history literally turns a simple adventure into a profound social critique. And that brings us to Section 5, the Roundtable discussion. I want you to picture a debate between two brilliant scholars sitting at a round table. On one side, you have the biographical focus, arguing for the intimate, unearthing the personal trauma, private relationships, and individual artistic drive of the writer. On the exact opposite side, you have the historical focus, arguing for the epic, revealing the massive societal forces, economic conditions, and political pressures pushing against that author. One is looking inward at the creator, the other is looking outward at the world. But here is the really beautiful truth about all of this. These two contexts, they don't actually compete. They complete the puzzle. You literally cannot separate the creator from their era. Maeterlinck's personal interest in mysticism was a direct reaction to the artistic currents of his time. And Twain's personal observations of the American South, they were completely wrapped up in the massive historical trauma of slavery. They reinforce each other perfectly. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for the day. What actually happens to works of literature if we completely overlook their biographical and historical contexts? Well, we risk missing brilliant social critiques. We reduce incredibly complex, courageous social statements into simple, flat entertainment. By mastering these lenses, you aren't just reading a book anymore. You're having a conversation with history. Class dismissed, and hey, keep looking for those hidden layers out there.